That's right. Sabrina Schmitz, Jim Jordan, and Mike Taylor, with our producer, Danielle Finch, are here once again with That Yearbook Podcast. Look for those people at every one of your national and state conferences. Maybe not all your state conferences, but
We'll do our best.
we'll do our
We'll
best.
try.
Those people will be there. Good morning, Jim and Sabrina and
Hey.
Danielle. Talking about today.
Well, today we're going to start talking about critiques. It's that time of year when you need to start thinking about, once the 24 yearbook is done, you want to get some feedback. I mean, everybody likes to get a little temperature on how they're doing. What can we improve? And so there are many options out there for you to get that kind of feedback. And we're going to talk about them all. So
Yay.
we're excited.
Yay.
Every yearbook staff, no matter what kind of book you're putting out, should really seek to get some kind of a critique, some kind of feedback, some kind of an idea of what you've done well, and then areas that you might be able to improve on creating your book, because it's never good enough. I mean, in my 35 years, we were always trying to get better. And it was always a little bit like whack-a-mole, boom, you get this taken care of and this one pops up and you get that taken care of. So the feedback that you're going to get really makes a lot of difference. And wherever you are, whether you're in a business, you run a company, everybody is always getting critiques so that they can improve. And so that's what we want to do here in the yearbook world.
Just getting that form back, just that. Now, it used to be a booklet, a lot of it's online, but just getting that back where somebody went through your book and marked off your captions are well done, and they give you examples of what not to do. Just getting that book and using that book to teach with is amazing. And then they're going to stick a certificate in there for a gold medal or a All-American, and boom, you've got great PR for your principal and your admin. So and I hear this all the time, and I know Sabrina and Jim hear this all the time, I'm ready to start competing. You were ready to start competing, and it's actually getting a critique, not competing. You were ready to start the minute you walked across that graduation stage.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. And I often hear, this is the they. What are they looking for?
Right.
What do they want? Well, those booklets that you're talking about, Mike,
Exactly.
that's the they.
Yeah.
That's the they.
If everybody should, and we used to start this way with my editors, everybody should study the booklet or the online critique, whatever it is,
Form, yeah.
study what they're looking for. What does it mean to have a great theme? What does it mean to develop your theme? What does it mean to have great photography, great coverage, great design? What those booklets do, they spell it out in very specific guidelines about what they're looking for. And it's really a great way to take the temperature on what you're doing well and what you need to improve on.
Yep.
It's so true, Jim. As soon as you said that, I was thinking the exact same thing of like, I hear all the time, like, what makes an award-winning book? Get a critique and you'll know. Like, you'll know all of those details that are in that critique are the things that make award-winning books. And you'd be shocked like at how detailed some of that stuff gets, but the big thing to remember here is you can't tackle it all in a year. Like if you get those critiques back, they're, like Jim was saying, they are super helpful for identifying, hey, here's what we're doing really well and here's what we need to improve upon. But a lot of times, like, there's a lot to improve upon. Like there's those critiques are like, it's so fun when they came in, but it was like an emotional roller coaster, like digging through the evaluations and going, oh my God, we did this so well. And then like, wow, we really dropped the ball over here,
Taking your emotional emotions out and bashing whoever the critiquer was is going to do you no good.
No good.
I see teachers all the time. Well, they just didn't like our book. That's not the case. That is not the case. Maybe they were showing you how you could do it better. Now, I
Yeah.
agree that sometimes when you read the written word, you can put your emotions in there. Don't. Try not to. My very first critique came back. I had 27. I can still tell you this to this day. 27 quotes that said we had fun. Who was my critiquer? H.L. Hall. How the heck did I get him on the first book? How? But I can tell you, and he circled them all.
Mm-hmm.
He circled every single one of them. Do you not think that made me a better advisor? It made me
Absolutely.
a way better advisor.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to touch back to something you said, Mike, early on. It's not about awards.
No.
It's about getting better.
Yes.
And we're going to talk more about awards in a later podcast, but it's kind of a slippery slope. You know, if you do the very best book that you can, the awards are going to follow. But if you start with that as your goal, you're setting yourself up to be disappointed.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the critique is to help you get better.
Mhm.
And the critiques are very subjective. Like there are a lot of rules and stuff in there, but there are a lot of things that sometimes might be one person's opinion versus another person's opinion about how things should look or be. But at the end of the day, there's so many benefits to getting a critique for your book. It is, like Jim said, it's about getting better. And there's a lot of ways that you can use that and make those critiques more than just an emotional roller coaster in your classroom. Like you can use those critiques to have kids sit down and critique their own book. Like, here's your book from last year. Here's the critique.
I
Ignore the
would do
comments that
that.
were there.
Yeah.
And then have them go through and go, what did we do well? What did we not do well? Like, what do we want to do? Then I would also say, take that critique. Like I said before, you're not going to tackle all of it in 1 year. It is,
No.
there might be way too much that you need to work on. Pick a handful of things, maybe one in each category. So in a lot of these critiques, you'll have concept, which is theme, design, photography, writing, and coverage. Those
Right.
are like your five main areas that are going to get critiqued. Maybe pick one thing in each area that you really want to, like, say, I remember 1 year we got picked on for editorializing. Like, we had too much opinion in our body copy and in our stories. So we hammered that. Like, I sent copy back to students over and over again. I was like, do it again. Here's an opinion word. You said some, you said few. Like, get these words out, because those are editorializing language. So we really hammered that one thing. And then we got really good at that. And then we started to realize that, like, hey, our captions are not super detailed. We need to start talking, not saying the opposing player, but saying, like, East Lake High School, like, that was the opposing team, and writing those details in there. So, but we didn't do all of that in 1 year. We picked our one thing and we really got great at that one thing. And then the next year we focused on the next thing. So use it as a way to build, knowing that it's not going to happen overnight, but one step at a time, and your book is going to get better a lot faster.
And I don't know how you all feel about this, but the sooner you send your book in for the critique of your choice, the sooner you're going to get, hopefully, your critique book back. And yes, these are national organizations that rely on volunteers. And here's where I'm going to pitch something. Volunteer to be a critiquer. Because guess what? You're going to look at 3 to 5 to 7 books, and you're going to be able to go through them. I don't care if you're a new teacher or one like Jim.
Yeah.
Well,
Third episode, check.
you're going to go through and you're going to learn that book, and you're going to learn the way to style your book better. And the national organizations hurt because they don't have enough critiquers.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the critiques are the heart and the soul of these organizations.
Yes.
They provide them funds that allow them to have conventions and other workshops, those kind of things. So it's really a thing that really helps support scholastic journalism in a major way. So,
Hey, I have
And
a
I think
question.
it's
Go ahead,
I
Sabrina.
was just gonna say, I think it's also a great another perk of it is it's a great way to motivate your staff. Like it's
Yes.
not just about making your book better, but my students got super competitive. So instead of it just being like we just want to make a good book and we're just going to make it as good as we can do, it
Mhm.
gives them something to strive towards, a something specific to work on to get better. It makes them want to be competitive, which makes them more
yeah,
passionate and
yeah,
excited about
yeah,
what they're doing. So they're not just going to throw a caption on a page. They're going to want to make that caption perfect. They're going to want to wait until they get the best photo possible for that spread because they want that critique to come back and say wonderful gushing things about how great that photo was or how great their caption writing is. So it really does a lot to drive the passion and motivation of the staff when you're getting these critiques.
And
yeah. And I'd
it
say
lives with them.
what you're trying
Mhm.
to do is create a culture of improvement. Like
Right. Yeah, there
I
you
would
go.
sit
Well
down,
said.
I would sit down with my staff and say, okay, what kind of a book do we want to create this year? Do we want to make some improvement? We want to keep the status quo? I mean, they would never agree to that because we had a culture of having a great book. But do we want to take on making this book better? And then they would say, yes, let's do that. And then we would go to that critique and use that as a jumping off point about how to do that. And advisor, you can say it a million times and they don't hear you. But when H.L. Hall says it in the
I could tell you my
critique
kids
book,
still can tell you that number. They still can. They're 45 years old and they still tell me that number. And it
yeah,
came
that's
from
right.
H.L. Hall.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
H.L. Hall, I'd like to know how many hundreds of thousands. I can think of a bunch of times he did that exact same thing for my staff.
Mhm.
So yay, H.L.
yes, I mean,
And thank you.
I believe in that man. I believe in the Bruce Wattersons and the Jim Jordans, and the Rick McNeils. Because they help you. It goes back to our podcast we did a couple of weeks ago about mentorship and friends. These critiques work for you.
And
Who? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I always kind of jump in right when Mike's about to start.
Me
We're
too.
so in sync. We're so
I
in
know.
sync.
But I was just gonna say, like, the other part, I know a lot of, I know we all know yearbook's a weird class, right? And it's not as concrete, sometimes as we as administrators and schools want it to be. And so critiques are a great way to present something concrete to your administration to say,
Amen.
yeah, here's what we're getting. Here's what we're doing really well. Here's what we're going to be focusing on this year, and it gives them something to look at, not necessarily grading wise. I mean, you could use it for grading wise in the classroom, but really something to present to your administrators and your community so that they are supporting you in your endeavor to improve,
And
to
you're
get better.
educating them, those administrators, to
Mhm.
understand that what you're doing when they walk in. Now, my principal, when he heard I got a pacemaker, he said, "Are you okay?" I was 20, what, 3, and I was looking at him. I was like, "Okay, they need to really change that name. They haven't." Um, but
He
yeah,
thought he was having heart problems.
but I was able to educate him with that booklet and turn that booklet into him for my individual teaching critiques, and it elevated my classroom.
Yes,
And he
for
gave me
and
sure.
I,
money because of that.
Even
and
better.
one of our schools just got recognized on the national level, Pinecrest in Boca Raton, and I just got the link yesterday of this was published in their school newsletter. The
Yes.
principal was
Yay.
bragging about their book has become a national award winner, and
So exciting.
it just makes everybody happy. It
Hmm.
Hey,
made the
hey,
advisors happy. It made the kids happy. It made the community happy. It's a great thing.
if
Hmm.
you're in Lexington, Nebraska, and you know who I am talking about, and you have a very small book and you don't have the funds because critiques are over $100.
Hmm.
Um, Tell me, Jim and Sabrina, what organizations you would go to for critiques first.
Yeah.
I always tell my people when you're first starting, like if you've never done a critique before, you're just getting into this whole game, I would say start local. Like start with your local state organization. So for Florida, it's the Florida Scholastic Press Association. In the new advisor field guide, there is a list of
Yes.
all of these Scholastic Press Associations by state. So if you're not sure where to start, check out the new advisor field guide. It's on yearbookhelp.com, and you can find the page that's got all the state organizations in it. But I would start there and see, get a critique from someone. I mean, it doesn't hurt to start with, friends, local people, even us, even like Mike, Jim, and Sabrina, just getting some feedback. But if you want something in writing, I think start local and then work your way up to the national organizations.
It's important to realize that not all states have great organizations. So
True.
maybe your state has some contest for like the best photo or the best theme opening. Enter all those things right from the get-go and get that feedback.
Yes. And your state might not have a state organization, but in the South, I know there's SIPA, which is Southern Interscholastic Press Association. They take all the way to Texas, and they'll probably critique a book from California. I don't know, but those critiques are done by amazing advisors. Joe Humphreys is in charge of FSPA, and he looks for great people. Again, everyone, volunteer.
Yes, please. Absolutely. But then there are the national organizations. You've got the National Scholastic Press Association and the Columbia Scholastic Press Association. So when you hear people talk about awards, usually it's a national awards. Usually it's one of those two, Jim.
Quill and Scroll as well.
Scroll,
yeah.
And Quill and Scroll is the one where you send individual pieces of your book in and get some critiquing and award possibilities that way as well.
And these kids that get these critiques back can use them in their portfolios to get into colleges.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So lots that we can get out of looking to these national organizations and state organizations, but there's also workshops, Mike.
Yes. Yeah.
If you don't want to wait to get or pay to get a paper critique, you can get an in-person critique.
Come to Elite Weekend.
Yes.
Hey, do I get some like travel music or something right now? If you're planning on your 2024 Elite Weekends, they're going to be in Orlando, Florida, Kansas City, Kansas, Anaheim or Southern California, and Fort Worth, Texas. The dates have not been advertised yet, but go by what I just said: Orlando, Kansas City, Anaheim, Fort Worth. That's the way they're going to go in order. That registration comes out on April 4th, but you need to think about bringing your kids to one of these Elite Weekends. That's my commercial.
Because what's going to happen with that is you're going to get feedback and critiques on site for the 25 book.
As you're doing it. And I guarantee you the greatest thing, this is a Mike Taylor concept for 20 years. It is life-changing for your book and your staff. We guarantee it. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't mind saying we can guarantee your book is going to do better. I'm not going to guarantee you a crown or a pacemaker. No. You are going to do better.
Absolutely. It's that culture of improvement, Jim. Yes. Like, right? Like that was well said. Yeah, it's like it's just cultivating that, and that Elite Weekend is the right environment to do that in. But like if you don't want to wait for an Elite Weekend, or if you have questions even after an Elite Weekend, Mike Taylor, Jim Jordan, myself, like we're always here to help y'all.
We can Zoom with you,
know?
Webinar.
We can Zoom with you. Yeah. We want to see what you guys are working on. I know like we do a lot with camps and workshops and stuff at the beginning of the year, and then it's like everybody goes away until the book is done, you know?
Yeah.
We need help throughout the school year. So don't hesitate. Reach out to your rep and see if you can set up a time for us to Zoom and see what you guys are working on.
And we want to stress, reach out to your rep. Do not reach out to us. directly.
Yeah.
And the only reason is we want to make sure your rep is involved with your process.
Yes,
So your
that's
rep
right.
needs to know that you would like a Zoom or a webinar, whatever you want. Before we go on, it's time for those really cool questions, Danielle.
So on Facebook, we have a group called Walsworth Advisors where we have asked our advisors to send us some questions that we can respond to on this podcast. And you can also share your questions on that for our next one. So with that
Yay.
being said, let's focus specifically on conventions. So
Yay.
one question says, is it worth it to plan an expensive out-of-state trip to a convention?
Yes.
Let me jump in on that one. It was the thing that had the biggest difference in my yearbook life. I went to this. I'm old, Mike. We went to our first convention in 1986.
They had to sail the Mayflower
That's
over
right.
to the convention.
And I have not missed a spring convention since 1986. It's almost 40 of them in a row. And what I did was, first of all, the kids that could figure out how to make it work financially and whatever, they were going to be my leadership for the next year.
Right.
If you can figure it out, you're gonna be wanting to come back. I'm gonna know you're coming back. And so then we would go to the convention with a purpose.
Yeah.
What can we learn that's going to help us have success in the next year? And so right from April 1, whenever that first convention was, we were rolling. We had a purpose and we got excited about what we learned at that convention. And there's so much you can do to have kids take notes and come back and share their notes and get connections with the speakers, all that kind of stuff. But, summer camp, and then number one really was getting to that spring convention.
Yeah.
Well, and I think
changed my program.
it's exposure on a bigger level of what yearbook can really be, right? Like I think when we're just in our own little world in the classroom, they don't see that there's this whole I didn't know that. I didn't do yearbook in high school. When I started doing this, I was like, oh my God, this is like a thing. Like this is like a big thing. Like this is a national thing. So I think when they start to see it on a larger level and a larger scale, it gets them motivated and excited and bought in to doing great work in the rest of the school year, So it's a great thing.
It is a lot of work to get it planned.
It is a lot of work.
Use parents to help you. Use your admin to help you. You're going to need to get approval from your school board to take your students out of state. And that's a scary thing for school board members that don't get it. So you need to have buddies. You need to have people helping you. But once you come back, the energy it's like night and day. I'm
Really
telling
is.
you.
And aren't we
100%
super
worth
excited?
it.
Aren't we super excited about this convention coming
Yes,
up?
Kansas
It's in
City.
Walsworth's hometown, almost.
That's right. Almost.
Not Marceline,
Close. It's in the right vicinity.
But we are going to Marceline on bus tours.
All right. So focusing specifically on motivation, because you guys talked about that a little bit. The next question from our Facebook group asks, what can I do to celebrate deadlines and also to keep my students motivated?
Oh my goodness. I love this one. One of the things that we did, this was just great. At the end of every deadline, we had an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that we did drawings on. We had one kid that was a good artist, and they would do a little cartoon of what that period of time at school was like. We'd put in big letters the number of pages that we had finished, the date, and everybody who was in the room when those pages got done signed it. And these little posters were up in the room all year long. And in fact, when I retired, I had like 10 years of these posters. And you could go back and like, when did we hand in pages last year? Oh, it was October 28th. And we did 14 pages. Yay us. And by Christmas, we had 150 pages. Yay us. And it was just a really fun way. And then at the end, we did a poster that you had to be there to sign when the book was finished. And so it was a big deal, just a great time when we celebrated what we had done.
Now, Sabrina, you want to know something? when Jim retired, they actually took a bulldozer to bring out all the Globe theaters he had on his shelves as well.
That's true.
That seems accurate.
That is true.
I feel like that
That is
checks
true.
out.
I
sure.
saw so many Globe theaters. I was like, what the heck? I do know the story of that. Tune into another podcast for the story of the Globe Theater.
Globe Theater.
All right. Well, we hope you all are enjoying our podcast. It's That Yearbook Podcast with those yearbook
Those
people.
yearbook people.
That's us.
Thank you for tuning in to That Yearbook Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on your preferred platform. Happy yearbooking!